So welcome, everyone, to today's National TPP Coalition call. It's June 14th, 2015. We are just about at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 7:30 Eastern. This is Elizabeth Moran, Communications Director of People Demanding Action. I'd like to welcome you today. We're going to have a wonderful call. Our featured special guests are Cleve Jones with Unite Here and Jeremy Davis with Pride at Work. We'll be focusing on our special topic, AIDS, Sharia Law, and the impact of TPP on our friends in the LGBT community. So sit back and enjoy the call. We will be getting underway in just a second. Just a little bit about the call itself, just to give you just a heads up. The meeting room functions. Those of you in the meeting room, most of you know the drill, but I'll run through it real quickly for those who might be new to us. In the lower left-hand side of the screen, you'll see a little place where it says type your message here. You can click on that with your cursor, type a message. If you have a question for the speaker or for one of the host team members, if you're looking for a link or information about something, go ahead and type it there. We have a number of folks who actually moderate the chat, and we'll look up information for you and provide it during the call. Also, if you have something you'd like to share, a link to something or information about an action, the one thing I would like to share with you is that we don't get into discussions there. It's not a discussion forum, so please try and keep it on topic, share information, share links, but we'd like to, out of respect for our speakers, sort of pay attention to what they're saying rather than get into side conversation. So please use the chat responsibly. Thanks so much. If you have any other questions after the call, you can email me at tpp@peopledemandingaction.org. There's also a link, if you scroll all the way up in the screen, to download this PowerPoint presentation, which has all of the links and information and contacts for all of us on the host team and the speakers. Now I'd like to introduce Harriet Haywood, National Call Team Co-Organizer and Programs Coordinator. Harriet is a Move On Regional Organizer in Florida, organizes national events for this team, and is going to be reporting on the regional events around the country at the end of the call. Harriet?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the call. Nice to be here. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you. Next up, Liz Anston, National Call Team Co-Organizer and Planning Team Member. She is a Move On Organizer in Los Angeles and usually provides us with campaign updates. I know she's done a great job of lobbying her representatives, and I believe managed to win over Javier Becerra for us. So, Liz? She may not have joined the call yet, so we're going to go ahead and skip ahead to save time. Tom Hocking is our National Call Planning Team Technical Advisor. He's a Move On Regional Organizer in Pennsylvania and handles your pre- and post-call technical questions. Tom is also responsible for uploading all of our content to the Global TPP Team Facebook page. So if you have any questions or something you want shared on that page, you can email Tom at twhocking@gmail.com. Tom?
Good evening, everybody. It's nice to have you on the call.
Thanks so much, Tom. And you're backing me up on the PowerPoint here, right, just in case I get in trouble?
Absolutely.
All right, great. Thanks. Next, I'd like to introduce Mara Cullen, another member of our National Call Planning Team. Mara is also the host for the chat box. She is a member of PDA's Mass Criminalization Team. She is Global Climate Convergence Leader in Illinois and has been organizing with us since the very beginning on this issue. Mara? Mara may have muted herself. So we're going to go ahead and jump ahead and just say high fives to Mara for all the great organizing that she's been doing in Illinois and her help on the call. Next up is Linda Brewster, National Call Planning Team Member. She's a Move On Regional Organizer based in Washington, covers most of the Pacific Northwest. She is also jumping in to help us out as Associate Chat Host this week. Linda?
Hi, Mara. I'm jumping in because Mara isn't able to today, and be patient, and I'll do my best to get you an answer to your questions.
Great. Thanks, Linda. And I'm sorry, I forgot about Mara being off this week. We've got so many folks on vacation right now. So we're going to skip through them. Lisa Oldendorf, New York Regional Organizer for Move On and member of our planning team and host team, is also out this week, but we'll give her a high five. Also, Jean Marie DeRay, who is with PDA. She's the National Issue Team's coordinator. She is traveling this week, also out organizing. And Jan Schwarzengruber, our organizer in Kansas, is also out this week. So we thank them all for their work and for all the stuff they're often doing now. Next up is Emily Ann Sladen, Director of Social Media with TPP Media March. Emily Ann, as many of you know, has been coordinating the TPP Tuesday Twitter storms since the very beginning. They've gone global. She has had phenomenal success in bringing in so many constituencies to storm with us every single Tuesday. Emily Ann, just let me know when you'd like me to switch slides. You're up. And maybe she's muted. Emily Ann, if you are muted, raise your hand by pressing *6. I'm looking for you in the call console. I'm thinking she may have had a little problem logging in this week. So what we're going to do is we're going to thank Emily Ann for doing such a great job on the storms. And I'm going to go ahead and skip to her slide, just to tell you a little bit about this week's TPP Tuesday Twitter storm. She has been working with Public Citizens Global Trade Watch and others to coordinate these storms. They write the tweets together. We share them on the PD Action page. She also has a special place where she puts the tweets. It's tiny.cc/TPP Media March. Again, you'll get a copy of this PowerPoint if you're on the call. You can download it right now from up top. But just make sure to join the storm. It is at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern this coming Tuesday, June 16th. If a vote on TAA has not happened by then, this will be a very, very important thing to do. It's going to be important anyway, just to draw attention. Is Emily Ann with us? Have you joined us yet, Em? I'm hoping that she's going to jump in at some point. If not, I'm going to tell you all about her storm. Anyway, twitter.com/TPP Media March. And then for the tweets, go to tiny.cc/TPP Media March. Again, this Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Next up, I'd like to ask if Adam Weissman is with us from Trade Justice. Adam, are you on the call? Oh, I see Adam. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Adam, your line is open. You've got 1 minute to tell us what's happening in New York with Trade Justice. Go ahead.
Great. A lot is happening. So tomorrow our activists are doing everything we can to get out to congressional offices before the TAA vote to let our elected officials know that a vote for TAA is a vote for fast track and that we are urging them to vote again against fast track. So we have drop-ins tomorrow with Representatives Maloney, Rangel, Donald Payne in New Jersey, Steve Israel, and Hakeem Jeffries. I'll post the details to the chat box. Also, for anyone in D.C. or who would like to come to D.C., throughout the day tomorrow we'll be doing letter drops in congressional offices of letters that we've collected to from constituents of reps from around the country who've signed letters in New York against fast track, again with the message to our elected officials that a vote for TAA is a vote for this TAA is a vote for fast track. So again, I'll post details to the chat box. If anyone would like to join us, we'd love to have you so we can stop fast track tomorrow through stopping TAA.
Thank you so much, Adam. And boy, that was great. You got it all covered in record time. So thanks so much, and thanks for your amazing work.
Welcome.
All right. I'm going to ask if Elisa Simmons, our fearless leader with the Public Citizens Global Trade Watch, is with us. Elisa, are you on the line?
I am.
All right. Then I'm just going to turn the mic over to Elisa. Everybody, I think, knows who she is. She is the person spearheading this. She has been our eyes, our ears, and our voice, the person that's been leading the charge for us, telling us what to do, and she's going to fill us in on what happened last week and what we need to do next. Elisa?
Well, thanks, Liz. It's mighty nice of you. And I haven't been on a call for a while, so I appreciate you inviting me to be back on. And it's really great to talk to everyone. I can basically sum this up quicker than Adam and say everyone just do what Adam just described, because that's exactly the work that needs to happen. And it's really exciting. I know that New York is on Friday is just taking this to a whole nother level, and that needs to happen in key districts all across the country. But back to what Liz outlined in terms of what happened on Friday. Take a step back, pat yourself on the back, take a deep breath. What happened Friday was phenomenal, was amazing, really great. And what we all expected to happen. I'll tell you that going into Thursday night and waking up on Friday and counting the votes and seeing where everything was with the plan, it was refreshing to know that because of all the grassroots work that's been happening over the last 2 years and 3 years, we were in a really great place. And defeating the full trade package by making sure that the trade adjustment assistance vote went down was amazing. And just really great work. Most of you know, I'm sure, that Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi wasn't really a leader, wasn't really going with 90% of her caucus, wasn't out public, and came out and voted no on TAA and no on TPP that provided the leadership necessary for a few votes. You also know that the TPA, the fast track or Trade Promotion Authority vote, is something that we lost, but because we won TAA, the entire package went down. I want to say that when we have an eventual vote on fast track, on Trade Promotion Authority, that the 28 Democrats that voted for fast track and voted for TPA, that will break down in a very different way. What happened on Friday was a symbolic vote. And so it's still going to be very, very close. But just like Adam said, we need to reach out to our representatives. And one, for the folks who voted no for TAA, for Trade Adjustment Assistance, we need to thank them. And there's Liz, I'm going to send you a list, and you can send out to everyone else. There are folks, I would say the majority of folks we can thank. We can thank by letters, and some stuff can be public, but they're generating calls, they're sending emails thanking them, and in-district coalition letters are really, really important. But it's, I do want to stress that for probably 2 handfuls of members, because they're being targeted by the White House and by big business, that public gratitude from unions, from our progressive coalition is not helpful to them, and it makes them more of a target. So I'm going to send some information so that you all know how that breaks down. At this point of the campaign, we really just need to get as much information out there as possible. So please look for an email from Liz, probably tomorrow morning, Liz, if that's okay, to be able to get that to you. Okay, great. I'll make sure that happens. In terms of the future, and the timing, it's a little unclear. I've been on strategy calls all weekend long, and there are several different scenarios at play that's possible, and no one really knows what's going to happen. I can say that, coming off of Friday, and just reports in the media, which are not the reports that we can hang this campaign on, right? We can't, base our work on that. But, Paul Ryan came out and said, well, I'm going to be able to deliver at least 100 votes if we take a re-vote on trade adjustment assistance. I'm going to deliver, 100, and the White House has to get the rest. Well, based on how the votes shook down, they're going to need about, and Paul Ryan is exactly what he says he has. They're going to need about 80 Democratic House reps to switch their vote. Not completely likely that we lose that much. We cannot underestimate for 1 second the power of the Obama administration. Cabinet officials have been on the phone all weekend, putting pressure on reps who voted no to vote yes, to try to shake out how, a re-vote would go. And I can say that it's not looking good for them for a re-vote. Their push for fast track failed pretty publicly. So whether or not they test another vote, a public vote of that magnitude, and fail again, is up in the air. And, what the last call that I was on today, folks are feeling like they're not going to do that because it's the reports that we're getting in is that the work that you all are doing out in the districts, out in the field, the grassroots work, it's working. It's having an impact. Reps are not moving. They're not going for the flights on Air Force One. They're not going for the special favors, right? They don't believe the president. And I will say also, when the president made that trip to the Democratic caucus in the morning before the vote, a lot of members reported out that they actually felt really insulted and that the administration doesn't have a good case for why fast track is important and why the Trans-Pacific Partnership is the so-called most progressive free trade agreement ever. They don't believe it. Obama talked a lot about one of his main arguments was, if you vote me down now, I'm just going to become a lame duck president, and everything we want to do together for the next 18 months is going to fail if you vote me down now, and that it was just not something that was going to move folks, right, in the face of more jobs being offshored, wages being suppressed, our food safety being in jeopardy, internet freedom, all that stuff. So folks said no. So we feel really good about that. What's scary and what's, I think, the most dangerous is a new package under a new rule that's fast track or trade promotion authority without any trade adjustment assistance tied to it or connected to it. And that is for a Democratic president to put that on a table at this stage of the game is vindictive and dangerous and really crazy and detrimental. Just completely detrimental. But it's something, I will say very frankly, it's something that we know the Obama administration is thinking about. And so we have to brace ourselves. We have to do exactly, again, go back to what Adam said, we have to go and thank folks and be out there and trade adjustment assistance. We have to, hold the votes that we have. And I believe that we can do that. But they're not going to stop for their push for fast track. They're not going to do it. So at some point, we have to be ready for them to vote again, possibly just on fast track, just on TPA with nothing else attached to it. And that is going to be, I think, within 3 to 5 votes. So everything that we've been working for over the past 3 years plus is going to come into play, and we've got to hold all of those. I don't have any, I don't have a special action. I don't have anything new to suggest in terms of organizing except to keep up the work. If your member is in district, I got a report yesterday that someone from the New York Coalition went out, Congressman Jeffries had a Congressman on the Corner event, and that person went out and talked to him and, shored up his vote, and it was really positive. And those are the things that we need to be doing. We cannot, if you've called 10 times already, make 20 more calls between tomorrow and Tuesday or Wednesday. They can try something tomorrow, not looking likely. They still have some work to be done. In terms, the opposition still has some work to be done in terms of getting their ducks in a row. But on Tuesday, we have to prepare for tomorrow, right? So we have to be fired up and ready to go. But Tuesday is the likely battle. And I think that I'll stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know if now's the time, Liz, or if I need to stay on. But we left time for you for Q&A, so we've got about 10 minutes for questions. If you would like to ask Elisa Simmons a question, press *6 on your phone. I will caution everybody, if you start to make a speech, we're skipping to the next caller. So we have 10 minutes with Elisa to answer questions. Press *6 on your phone if you have a question about fast track or what's happening next week. All right, Mark Asplin has a hand up. Go ahead, Mark.
Good evening. Elisa, can you explain how TPA passed, the TAA failed?
Sure. So I'll start with TAA. So Trade Adjustment Assistance failed for a few reasons. I think most of us know that Trade Adjustment Assistance is something that Democrats traditionally have championed. It's a program that provides funding to workers who lose their jobs because their jobs have been offshored because of free trade agreements. And the package that Republicans, put together was just woefully inadequate. And to be perfectly clear, Boehner and Ryan and Senator Hatch don't care about displaced workers. They don't. The trade adjustment assistance, that whole package was put together to provide some cover for Democrats who wanted to vote for Trade Promotion Authority, who wanted to vote for TPA or Fast Track. It was supposed to make it easier for them. But because the package that was put forth was completely underfunded and took the pay for it, it was taken out of Medicare. That was what was suggested. Democrats, took a good look at it, and really our friends in labor, in the labor movement, took a look at it and said, no way, that's not acceptable. We want something more. And so that was the first vote to, come up, and it went down completely. So because of the rule that was passed, it defined how they had to vote. And there were 3 separate votes. And so if one failed, the whole thing went down. They went with trade adjustment assistance first, and because that failed, it didn't matter. We won once that happened. The vote for Trade Promotion Authority was a completely symbolic vote, and it was something that they knew. When I say they, the Obama administration and the GOP leadership in the House, it was something that they knew they could pass. And so they did that as a symbolic gesture to show international partners who are part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It was fake. It was false. But they needed to show something, because if it just went down and they didn't take that vote, or if that vote went down, it was just going to look horrible, and TPP negotiations were going to be completely frozen. And so there are, we have to recognize, and this is why, we won by a large vote margin on TAA, but the margin on TPA, on Fast Track, is much smaller. And so the way they won is by having when I say a lot, I don't mean, 100 or more, but there were a couple dozen of House Republicans who saw this, who would never ever vote for anything that had trade adjustment assistance connected to it. But because it was a symbolic TPA vote, without any of that, they voted for it. And then there were 28 pro-trade Democrats who actually, believe in it and really don't give a fuck. They just want to move forward with this. They don't care about, they're not on our side. We don't have the same principles. And some folks who really just didn't want the president to be embarrassed. And so they voted for it. But when we actually get to a fight that's just about Fast Track, if that comes, or if a trade adjustment assistance package that is put up there that's actually adequate, the vote margin is going to be much smaller. And I think we're going to come out the other side of it by 2 or 3 votes if we keep the pressure up.
Thanks so much, Elise. I think that puts it in a perspective for everyone. All right, we have Alex Foxman up next. Go ahead, Alex.
Actually, it's Paul.
I'm sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
Hello?
You came up as Alex. Go ahead.
Sorry. Now, I know that the TPP package was passed by the Senate first and it went to the House. The House said, well, we'll just pass the TPA portion of it and leave the TA out of it. Can't they just go back to the Senate and say, well, then if you just accept the TPA as it is, then it passes? In other words, can the battle be won just by the Senate?
Right, so they can go back to that's a really great question, Paul. So they can go back to the Senate, but here's the thing. For Democratic senators to champion a trade promotion authority or fast track without protection for workers is like the GOP passing a progressive, comprehensive immigration bill. I mean, it's just like not going to happen. Just for a lot of folks in terms of their values, they understand that that's wrong, and it's political suicide. Senator Ron Wyden, who was a champion of this entire mess in the first place, the Democratic champion, came out with a statement on Friday saying, I will never vote for a TPA bill without trade adjustment assistance attached to it. So the political reality of that is pretty much impossible. I'm not, anything can happen with this fight. It's really dynamic, and we've got to keep on our toes. But that scenario just doesn't. It's so far from reality.
Thanks, Elisa. Okay, we have time for maybe one or two more questions if they're short. We have someone at area code 212-979-0067. Let us know who you are.
Susan Quist. I'm wondering about the Sharia issue, which I only recently noticed in the last day or two, and it seems to me like it should be a major block for Republicans as well as Democrats to how you could vote for TPP or the fast track and put the U.S. legal system on the same footing with Brunei, where they just introduced Sharia law across the board, and Malaysia, where it's part of their dual legal system. Is anybody working to push those buttons with both parties?
Really great question. I'm just as appalled as you are about specific to women's rights and LGBT rights, and I think that the reality is just sad. And I think that Jeremy and I forget the name of the other person is the key speakers tonight. You're going to talk about that. Yeah, they're going to speak to it a lot. Even though I'm a lesbian, and have been fighting this, and that's one of the things that's most appalling. I think that they're going to be able to speak to it a lot better. But the reality is that this administration and the members of Congress pushing this, they don't care. They don't care. It's completely acceptable to them, and they're doing everything they can to make sure that Malaysia and Brunei are a part of the TPP. They're doing everything they can to protect them. Senator Menendez, and it came out with an amendment that said that countries who were in terms of how the State Department classifies human trafficking, countries who are on Tier 3 can't be a part of our business and how we engage in international commerce. That passed out of the Senate, but in the House they're doing everything to make sure that stays in. And we think about those countries, right? And the economies of those countries, based on what they produce and what their workers can afford, Malaysia and Brunei are trivial in terms of the world's economy and why we should be doing trade with them. So we have to stop and think about what this really means. It means workers who can be oppressed and exploited. And the fact that our country is pushing to make sure that we do business with these other countries is appalling. And so, Sharia law or Christianity or any other religion that condones and that condones and exploits people in that way is wrong, and we shouldn't be doing business with that. But I got to tell you, and it's really sad, it's not a major concern for most people.
Thanks so much, Elisa. And we're right at 5, so I'm going to have to transition to our next speaker. I don't know if you're going to stay with us or not, Elisa, but if you can, great. And if you have to go, I understand because your hands are really full. But we are going to get some more information from you to share with everybody in terms of next steps, right?
Yeah, and it's actually 8 o'clock, and I have to hop on another call, so I apologize.
So we're on perfect timing. All right. Thank you, my friend, and thank you so much for your great work and for your guidance on this.
Absolutely, and I've got to tell you, DC is like it's a silo, and it's isolating. And even though we get the latest information, it seems and feels really sexy. It's not. I'm excited and invigorated by all the work that you all are doing out in the field. So thank you, and keep it up. We are almost there, folks. Like, we really can shut this down and not only stop something, but we have the opportunity to make something really great, to turn around the way that we engage in international trade. And it's going to be, because of you all on the front lines really doing this work and engaging on a day-to-day basis. So I honor you, and I thank you so much. And I just I send you all the energy and all the love possible and encourage you to keep up the great work. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Elisa. Have a great day, and thanks again. All
Bye-bye.
right. Thanks. Bye-bye. I'd like to welcome Dr. Margaret Flowers. She really doesn't need an introduction. We all know her as basically the face behind Popular Resistance Flush the TPP, the fearless leader of just about every action that we've seen in Washington, from scaling the trade building to getting out in the streets and in the faces of senators who aren't on our side. Now, Dr. Flowers, I don't see you in the meeting room, so if you could follow along with your own PowerPoint and let me know when you would like me to switch your slides, I will do that.
Can you hear me, Liz?
We can hear you, yes. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to have to find the PowerPoint, but sorry, I wasn't that organized.
Okay,
thank you so much.
You can see we've got the next slide is your Rig Trade Rebellion slide with actions update and a little
okay, great.
And then some photos and stuff. So just
great,
cue me and we'll stay with you. Okay.
All right, I'll pull that up while I'm talking. Yeah, so thank you. We're kind of working really hard here and getting ready to head back down to DC and not quite caught up on our sleep from last week. But we decided to start having a more prominent presence on Capitol Hill as we knew the House was moving towards a vote on fast track. And so the week before last week, we started on Thursday, set up on the corner of Independence Avenue and New Jersey Avenue, right between the Longworth House building and the Capitol. And this is a space where many members of Congress from the House pass back and forth when they're going to the Capitol to vote. So it's a great place to be seen and also to encounter members of Congress. We did the same thing when they returned last week, and on Wednesday morning when they announced the Friday vote, we decided to have a 24/7 presence there, which turned out to be really fantastic. We had thousands of flyers that we were handing out to people. We spoke to other advocates who were there for different reasons, who didn't even know about the Trans-Pacific Partnership or Fast Track and how it was related to their issue. And so we could urge them to also, when they met with members, to mention that as well. We had students coming by that we were able to do impromptu teach-ins right there on the spot. And then a lot of interesting encounters with staffers and members of Congress who came down, particularly in the evening when things were quieter and nothing was going on. They felt a little more comfortable coming down and kind of checking out what was going on. And so we're able to get really up-to-the-minute kind of information from members also as they were passing back and forth towards the vote and then after the vote. And so we're, we were very excited Friday when we saw a large margin that the TAA lost by. Of course, it was disheartening to see them then move to pass fast track. We got really different signals from members of Congress as they were coming out. Some of them were our allies. We're clearly very sad that a fast track bill had passed. Others felt that the fact that TAA didn't pass meant that the whole thing was still alive, but as they put it on life support. Others urged us, of course, to continue keeping up the pressure. And I think, it really was what we were hearing from the staffers who came down was that the phones were ringing 20-1. They were hearing opposition to fast track. As you probably know, Speaker Pelosi, or former Speaker Pelosi, was not even answering the phone. That was going directly into messages, and we understand this weekend that her message box is full. So great work. This really showed that we have this tremendous movement that rose to the occasion. And so, as Elisa said, we're close. We're not quite there yet. We are planning to head back to Washington, D.C. in the morning. We've been calling, trying to get our allies and friends to be down there. If you know people in the D.C. area who can join us, we're planning to be there at 11 to organize so that when members are returning, they have to be there by noon, or supposed to be there by noon, that they see that we're back again. If we can get several dozen people, our plan is to make some noise and kind of protest around the house area. Something that we didn't do last week. We really were just set up to be visible and to give information, and I think that made it an opening space for lots of people to come down and talk to us. But I think now it's time to show that there is a little bit of a rebellion going on, that people are pretty upset with fast track, don't want to see it pass, and then we'll be setting up our 24/7 presence again there. So if anybody wants to join us, that would be great. I think that for us now, the main focus has been on those 302 members who voted no on the TAA. And what we were hearing from the Republicans is that they expect the Democrats to do this heavy lifting, and if we want to pass TAA, they're not going to really be helping with it. They expect the Democrats to get another 80 or so votes to pass that, and that seems like a pretty heavy lift, but not impossible. We know there's going to be more arm twisting. And we know there are other games that they could play down the road, so it's really important that we continue to be vigilant, thank those members that voted no, encourage them to vote no again, and be ready to mobilize. If they, I know Elisa was pretty optimistic that they would not send it to the Senate without TAA. We're not totally optimistic. This is a huge priority for the President. There are 56 Republicans, which just means they need 5 other Democrats to win this. So in the Senate, so we'll have to see what's happening with that, as well as whether they might move to create a new, more palatable TAA in the House, and then send that to the Senate. So that things are still in play; they're in flux. But I just want to say, great work to everyone who's been so engaged in this and ready to respond rapidly when needed. So keep up the calls. I don't know if I shared with you, hopefully I did. We have a Google document that we created yesterday that has a list of the 302 members who voted no, plus their phone numbers and their Twitter handles. So make sure that you have that, Liz, and you can make that available to people as they need it.
Yeah, it's actually on the slide. It's 2 slides from now. I've still got the next slide up with the 28 Democrats who sold us out.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I put that one up, and then the next one has your Rolling Rebellion Resources, which has the video from Real News, the video to the RT Arctic America, and then the one your link to your Google Doc on how they voted. So you want to talk about the Democrats, or you want to skip ahead?
Well, no, I think, there were 28 Democrats, and some of them are the new Democrats, which are very pro-business. I think in particular, Kathleen Rice needs to be brought out. She is a new member of Congress from New York who had signed 2 letters saying that she was opposed to fast track, and then flipped under pressure to support it. And there were some protests at her office. But I think everybody ought to be thinking about these ones who truly showed their stripes, that they're not with the people, they're with Wall Street, and show our power by making this, making them held accountable when elections come around. So I hope people will think about running against them, refusing to donate to their campaigns, refusing to volunteer for them, and just making it clear that they have to be held accountable for their actions. That's how we show our power, and that's how in the future members will be more likely to listen when the people are saying pretty clearly what they're opposed to or what they're in favor of. So I'll stop there, and then I encourage people to keep following, do what you're doing, and then if you can help kind of spread the word about the Rig Trade Rebellion and get that kind of meme out there, that would be great. Follow us on Twitter at #RigTradeRebellion. If you want to create your own Rig Trade Rebellion where you are with some sort of a visible action, either at a member's office or in a very visible space in your community, that would be great. If you send us information about it, we'll post it on our map. If you send us photos, we'll share those. And so it's really shows that there's some popular anger. I think that was part of our power was Speaker Boehner sent down a staffer to check out who we were. He didn't identify himself as such initially, but then further into the conversation we found that out. And he initially came down saying, oh, well, are you with some sort of group, like farmers or something? Or are you with labor? And we were just saying, no, we're with a very broad coalition of people across the political spectrum, across a range of issues. And the next morning he tried to tell the Wall Street Journal that we were funded by labor, which we weren't. And he actually at one point in the day was parked right next to us and had his window down, and we were able to confront him about that and say, no, we are not backed by a particular group. We are the people. We represent teachers. We had a teacher there. We had someone from the media. I'm a doctor. My partner's a lawyer. We said, we are just people who care about this issue. And I think that was a little disconcerting to him to hear. So let's keep showing that the people in this country are aware, and we're not going to take it. And I'll stop there.
Great. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to go ahead and back up to your intro slide so that if you have time to answer a few questions, folks can also make note of your contact information. I've got your Twitter handles, both of them, and all of your contact information on your face slide. So, folks, I'm going to go ahead and clear the queue right. And I'm going to invite folks, if you'd like to ask a question of Dr. Flowers, press *6 on your phone. No speeches, please. Questions only, so she can answer as many as possible. *6 to ask a question. All right. Lauren Steiner, go ahead. You have the floor.
Yes, I was wondering if there's anything to this, if you know anything, or if Alyssa is still on the call, about the highway funding, the article in The Hill that reported that Nancy is ready to trade away trade in exchange for transportation infrastructure funding.
That's a great question. Thank you for raising that, Lauren. Yeah, we know what you know, that the reporting Pelosi is saying basically that she would help smooth the pathway for fast track in exchange for, I think, $100 billion of transportation funding that the transportation has been inadequate. Well, it's for really bridges and roads. It's not mass transit like many of us would like to see. But the highways have been underfunded for years, and so that's what she's estimating she's going to need. That's a pretty big lift, so it's really hard to know. Is that her way of saying, look, I'm willing to work with you, but asking for the impossible, and then knowing that she won't really be asked to work with them because they can't deliver? Is she seeing this as a political opportunity to actually get something that she wants out of this deal that maybe she thinks is going to move forward? It's really hard to know. But we're in the process of making a big yellow banner right now that says, don't compromise, vote no on TAA. We just we want the members to hold the line. Over.
Great, thanks. Alan Blaines is up next. Go ahead, Alan.
Hello, everybody, and Dr. Flowers. I'm just wanting to ask if there's anything happening to bring in the 800th anniversary of the Magna Carta, which is tomorrow, with the fact that the TPP is a complete destruction of British common law, and the whole idea of open justice and requirement for precedent cases to be cited when there's rulings on challenges to various initiatives. Like I find it very strange that we have a situation where municipalities can be overruled by corporations, and I think that there's a real big tie-in with the fact that this delegation of authority to corporations is essentially the same as King John in 1215 having the right to act with cavalier disregard for law. And I think there needs to be some effort to tie that together.
Thank you, Alan. I wasn't aware of that, but that's actually that's a very cool concept, and we have a media call coming up in about 45 minutes to get prepared. So I see some memes coming up. I forgot to mention that.
Hello?
I'm sorry, there's some background noise. Go ahead. There was one thing that happened last week that I forgot to share with you, and you may be already aware that Wednesday night Congress members had to go in the evening and vote to repeal the country of origin labeling for meat. Did you talk about that? And that was because the WTO Trade Tribunal, Mexico and Canada sued us over that, saying that those labeling laws were barriers to them being able to export their meat into our country because we prefer to eat meat that's raised here. Right after that vote, Speaker Boehner was interviewed and said, our farmers should not be punished with retaliatory trade policies, which is just so hypocritical because that's exactly what we're going to see more of if Fast Track goes through and these agreements are signed into law. So I wanted to share that story with you, and thank you for that tip about the 800th anniversary. We'll see if we can use that in some of our memes.
Great. Thank you so much. I wish we had time to take more questions, but we're just about at the time for our guest speaker. And you said you've got another call that you have to join tonight also?
That's true, and an organizing call, and I still have banner painting to do. But thanks, everybody, for all the work that you're doing.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Flowers, and we will be sure and share all this information with everyone. And if you have anything that you'd like us to include in the follow-up, just shoot it over to me in an email. We'll make sure it gets included.
Thank you.
And thanks for inspiring us. It's been great.
Well, you guys inspire me. You're doing such great work, and together we are going to beat this, but we're not there yet, so let's keep the heat on. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Onward.
Good night.
Thanks. Good night, Margaret. All right. Next, I would like to introduce to you our first featured guest, Cleve Jones of Unite Here. Those of you who may not have heard his name are probably still familiar with his work. Anyone who has heard of the Names Project AIDS Memorial Quilt should know that Mr. Jones with Unite Here was the architect of this. He came up with this idea to honor the 85,000 Americans who have died of AIDS, many of them friends of his. He also was a key organizer of the Beverly Hills Hotel boycott with the Sultan of Brunei, passed Sharia law, and he was a owner of Beverly Hills Hotel. He's been involved in LGBT issues forever, is a fundamental organizer of everything that we care about that is good and true, and has been working on the San Francisco AIDS Foundation, advocacy work for LGBT Americans, and more things than I can even talk about. I would spend the entire rest of the call just giving you his background, so I'd say check Wikipedia, but for now I'd just like to say we are so honored to have Cleve Jones with Unite here with us tonight. And Cleve, just let me know when you'd like to advance the slides. The floor is yours, sir. I'm going to double check and make sure Mr. Jones is not muted here, because I saw him in the call, but I'm thinking maybe we lost him. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to clear our Q&A. Cleve, if for some reason you have been muted, press *6 on your phone. It will either unmute you or raise your hand for me. Cleve, is that you? Are you with us?
Hello? Hello?
Is that you, Cleve?
No, this is not Chris.
Oh, okay. All right. I've got Cleve up next. Okay, go ahead, Cleve. Are you with us?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Sorry about that. Sometimes technology is not our friend. Welcome, sir. You have the floor.
Well, great. Thanks for those kind words, and I'm happy to be with you all today. You could go ahead and advance the slide because I hate the photo you picked.
I'm sorry. I have another one at the end.
So you see there the image of the quilt that my friends and I started here in San Francisco. That was started actually the same year as ACT UP, and the community was really mobilized. But there was a lot of people who weren't part of the movement against AIDS. And while the quilt's a very poignant memorial,
it was also an organizing vehicle. We were trying to broaden the base of the movement to fight back against HIV/AIDS, and the quilt was very, very successful in drawing new people into the movement. I've been working with Unite Here for the past 10 years, and my primary role there is to build and strengthen coalitions between the LGBT community and the labor movement in the United States and Canada. Unite Here represents hospitality workers, about 300,000 in the two countries. So we're not a giant union, but we began that coalition building with a pretty cool effort called Sleep with the Right People, which was an effort to get LGBT travelers and conventions to go to hotels that had union contracts. You can move the slide. So I've been doing this work for about 10 years, and about the same time that I started, the Sultan of Brunei bought the Bel Air and the Beverly Hills hotels, both iconic properties, very well known within the entertainment industry. Both had been union shops for many years, and when the Sultan's organization purchased the hotels, they were shut down for renovation. All of the union workers were fired and were not brought back. So our affiliate in Los Angeles, Local 11, has been endeavoring to do a boycott there for many years. And it didn't really get any traction until the Sultan decided to impose this extreme form of Sharia law. It included death by stoning for women accused of adultery and for gay people. And so then we launched the boycott, Stop the Sultan, and we're joined by Feminist Majority and the Human Rights Campaign and many other feminist and LGBT organizations. And I think we've been very successful with it in terms of pulling business out of the hotel. And, I think it's important to remember that Brunei is an absolute dictatorship, unlike Malaysia, which is still sort of a mixture of democratic process and Sharia law. One of the things that happened that was very interesting is that I myself and many others were monitoring social media and regular media out of Malaysia and Brunei, and what we discovered was that the boycott was extremely well noticed there, and became a useful argument for moderate forces within the Muslim communities there, who were pointing out that these kinds of law could isolate them economically. It's kind of similar to the backlash that Governor Pence of Indiana got when he put through his Religious Freedom Act. So I was heartened to know that our little efforts in LA were actually providing some moral support and another argument for Muslim voices within Malaysia who were opposed to these extreme laws. We actually met with some LGBT folks from Brunei at the World Pride Conference last year in Toronto who, were not able to speak out themselves but expressed their gratitude that we were doing it. From the get-go, we've tried to link the fight against the Sultan to the fight against fast track. It's been a real difficult challenge to get the LGBT community to look at fast track as an LGBT issue. Pride at Work is the LGBT constituency group. We've got their head, Jeremy Davis, is with us on this call. But really, Jeremy and Pride at Work and Unite Here have kind of been at the forefront of trying to get the LGBT community to pay attention to this. And it really has not been particularly useful up until really last week. I thought we weren't having any kind of impact. But then last week, the administration got I don't know how many there were, about 9 openly gay ambassadors to co-sign a letter to The Advocate, one of the principal LGBT news magazines, talking about, it was just an outrageous set of lies about how the TPP was good for LGBT. And I took that as an indication that the administration was at least concerned enough about the LGBT community's opinions on this to get their ambassadors to do this letter. Jeremy and I immediately penned a response that was published, got a lot of attention, and enough attention to be referenced at a press conference in the White House. So I feel like maybe we were doing a better job than we thought. The arguments to be used to get LGBT people to support folks on this, and I think in the next couple of days we have the ability to get this message out again. But to be very quick on this, the issues where I think we have the most leverage have to do with the issue of circumventing local jurisdictions' legislation to protect LGBT people. And clearly, I think that resonates with all sorts of gay people, because we've seen states now that in the United States that have, like Missouri, which have passed, and Arkansas, which have passed bills to negate local ordinances, local human rights ordinances. So I think that one, the idea that corporations, when they find these kinds of job protections inconvenient, might be able to circumvent them. I think the next one is continues to be Sharia law. People are concerned about that. One has to be careful how one approaches that. But in Brunei, we have an absolute dictator, a monarchy, who has passed this legislation. And when I point that out to people, that our president is rewarding this dictator, this king, this sultan of a nation with no democratic rights whatsoever, no rights for LGBT people whatsoever, people are appalled by that. And then I think the other talking point that people need to pay attention to has to do with big pharma. Our community learned a long time ago that the pharmaceutical industry was not our friend, despite the advancement in treatments for HIV/AIDS. Many people within the community feel that big pharma has kind of played the role of an extortionist with this disease. There's huge issues right now about making generic versions of these medicines available in places like South Africa, where the death rate is still appalling and access to these meds is still minimal. So I think those are the main issues that we can use to approach the LGBT community. Today is Pride celebration in Los Angeles. Unite Here Local 11 had a large presence in the parade, reminding people of the boycott, linking it to the TPP, and we're available to assist in any kind of targeted lobbying, and anybody who wants to get hold of me to find out how to involve our affiliates with that over the next couple of days, you can contact me directly at cjones@unitehere.org. I think at this point I want to turn it over to Jeremy Davis, who's been doing a great job of heading up Pride at Work and has been really the lead person in the LGBT community on opposing Fast Track. Jeremy, you want to jump in?
Sure. Thanks, Cleve. That was a great intro. So I'm really, really pleased to be here to talk about this, both of these issues tonight.
Hey, I'm going to jump in, Jeremy, and say, let us know when you want us to advance your slides too, okay?
Oh, sure.
So I sort of skipped ahead with Cleve, but we've got a lot more for you, so just let me know, okay?
All right. Feel free to go ahead and switch to the next one. I don't remember the exact order, but we'll go with it. All right.
Okay.
So Cleve covered some of this, but I want to go into just a little bit of the detail about why the LGBT community should be incredibly concerned about the TPP and Fast Track. As Cleve was saying, the adoption of Sharia law in Brunei and similar criminal codes in Malaysia are really, really dangerous precedents and could lead to terrible human rights abuses for LGBT people and women as well. In the penal code in Brunei, as Cleve mentioned, also targets women who are convicted of adultery, but that also includes those women who've been raped and are rape survivors, because in these countries, if you're raped, it's still your fault if you're a woman. So this is a really big issue, and so Brunei and Malaysia, we tie them together, but the laws are a little bit different. In Brunei, they are phasing in this Sharia law penal code, and by the end of this year, we'll be looking at a situation where you can be stoned to death if you are convicted of homosexuality in Brunei. And for those of you who aren't exactly familiar with what stoning is, it is an absolutely brutal and terrible punishment where, as you can see on the screen, they dig a hole, you're buried basically up to your neck, and then the community is invited to pelt you with stones until you're dead. It is absolutely a terrible, terrible death. In Malaysia, it's not quite as bad. You can be beaten, jailed, fined, whipped, and face up to 20 years in prison if convicted of homosexuality. So it's really bizarre as we look at the landscape, and even, we have these two countries, Brunei and Malaysia, that are already in TPP negotiations. But as I'm sure all of you know, TPP is considered a docking agreement, so other Pacific Rim nations could join after it's passed. And when we start looking at Pacific Rim nations, there are quite a few that aren't necessarily terribly friendly for LGBT equality. So the idea that the administration is pushing so hard to include these countries that, not only abuse LGBT people and women, but when you look at Malaysia, our own State Department lists Malaysia as a Tier 3 human trafficking nation, which is the worst designation of human traffickers in the world. And if you reach out just a little bit further, Vietnam, that's also included in the TPP, is actually listed on the State Department as a trafficker of child labor. So there are actually stories documented by the U.S. State Department of militias going into villages and buying children from their parents as young as 8 years old and giving $150 or whatever, the equivalent, and taking these kids to the city to work in factories as indentured servants or slaves. So it's a huge problem, and the administration is making this argument that somehow we will have more leverage against these countries as if we include them in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a weird argument considering just in December the administration kicked out the country of Gambia out of a trans-African trade agreement there, in part because of their abuses of LGBT people. So, in Africa, we can throw people out of a trade agreement because they don't comply with the basic human rights standards toward LGBT folks. But when we're talking about the TPP, we're going to include Brunei and Malaysia with all of their problems with LGBT people and women and human trafficking. So it's just really atrocious that we're looking at this, and the administration is pushing so hard to keep these countries in, and there's not even a consideration to remove them. Pride at Work led a letter a year ago, actually this month, with the Human Rights Campaign, the National LGBTQ Task Force, and the National Center for Transgender Equality all signing on to say that we were demanding that we want Brunei and Malaysia removed from the TPP or to have negotiations stopped until they come into compliance with basic human rights standards. We didn't get a response to that letter. We also called on the new LGBT envoy at the State Department, who was one of the signatories of the letter that Cleve referenced to the advocate that he and I responded to. We also challenged them to make LGBT lives in Brunei and Malaysia an issue with the administration in trade and in the TPP. And instead, he's now defending the TPP as somehow going to lift up the lives of LGBT people. So it's a very confusing stance for the administration to take when it isn't even consistent with their stance just 6 months ago. And so, our position is pretty clear that no country that jails, abuses, or kills its LGBT citizens should be allowed preferential access to U.S. markets. That seems like a no-brainer, but apparently we want to send the world a message that we're willing to overlook egregious human rights abuses if there's profit to be made. But speaking of profits, The next issue I want to talk about really quickly is access to affordable generic drugs. Cleve also mentioned how Big Pharma is in this game and how the TPP is going to be a massive handout to Big Pharma. And this revolves around the extension of patents for certain types of life-saving medications. Under TPP, any medication that's derived from a biological process, which is a lot of medications these days, would see the length of their patents extended from 7 to 12 years. So, this is an additional 5 years where no generic drug can be brought onto the market because you can't create these drugs without access to the research data that the pharmaceutical companies have. And if they get to hold on to that for 5 more years, then obviously they are the exclusive provider of these medications. This increases the costs and decreases the access to certain HIV/AIDS medications, as well as other life-saving treatments that are derived from biological processes. It also gives Big Pharma a huge and tighter stranglehold on the world's drug supply. Access to generic drugs, especially in developing countries, is literally a matter of life and death. There was a study that I saw, and I didn't find the link to provide ahead of time, but in a study that was released at the 2014 International AIDS Conference in Melbourne, Australia, it was estimated that Vietnam, which is, as I mentioned, a TPP country, would have to more than triple their government expenditures on antiretroviral drugs just to maintain their 60% treatment rate for HIV patients in that country. It's just astounding. They couldn't possibly afford to triple rate, so the obvious result is that more and more people in that country would lose access to their life-saving medications. And if this happened in other countries, which it would drive up the cost in all countries, we could be looking at a resurgence of HIV/AIDS rather than at least the kind of maintenance level that we are now. Doctors Without Borders and AMFAR have both released some really startling reports about the effects of these trade deals on the HIV/AIDS epidemic and on other medical issues. One of the other kind of asides here that goes along with this that I found was really astounding is the TPP would also allow the patenting of medical procedures. So, if a doctor perfect some new procedure for treatment of cancer, or if there's a new stitch that doesn't that a doctor comes up with and there's it reduces scarring or it holds better or something like that, they can actually put a patent on that, and then you have to pay that doctor before you can use that procedure. It's kind of astounding. So as we're fighting the TPP, it's important to keep these things in perspective. 35 million people, as the slide says, worldwide are now living with HIV/AIDS, and we can't let them down. We can't have a situation where the cost of the medications and the access to those medications is increased significantly. Excuse me, sorry. And so when we're thinking about HIV/AIDS medications and their access, we obviously want to lower costs and increase access to those treatments. So we've been trying to highlight those two issues within the LGBT community, talking about them to not only our members, but to everybody who will listen, members of Congress who are certainly concerned. It's been brought up in several hearings, both the issues with Brunei and Malaysia and the issues with Big Pharma. There was a recent article in HIV Plus magazine that digs deeply into these issues and how both LGBT organizations and HIV/AIDS organizations have stayed out of the fast track and TPP fight, in large part, as the article mentions, because there was a lot of arm twisting from the administration, and some say even threats for their funding and access to the administration for them to either come out in favor of TPP or at least remain silent. So, this is a huge issue. We've been trying to get more traction for it. We're glad that folks are finally paying attention. It was really exciting to have the White House respond to my op-ed with Cleve in The Advocate. Of course, it was a counterfactual and rather bizarre, since they actually talked about an issue that we didn't talk about and tried to say that we would prefer not to engage with these countries at all instead of trying to lift up their human rights standards. But we're glad that it got talked about in the White House briefing room. And with that, I think I will stop and give some time for questions.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Jeremy. And I'll skip back to your slide too, because you were talking about what was happening in Vietnam and your graph that showed the growth of patients receiving antiretroviral therapy. I noted, when I thought that in the Asia Pacific region, it has just gone up dramatically. So that
it has.
That does sort of explain. We're entering into an agreement with these countries, and it looks like they're needing these drugs, so that can't be a coincidence.
Right.
All right. Well, I'm going to invite folks to press *6 to ask a question. I see Stan Forscher has a hand up. Go ahead, Stan. You have the floor. Stan?
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
Yeah,
all those different mute buttons, I can never keep track of them. When the Senate passed its version of fast track, Senator Menendez added an amendment that would keep Tier 3 countries, any trade agreement with Tier 3 country out of the fast track process. How did that happen? I mean, that's kind of extraordinary. Was there any lobbying to do that? And it seemed to catch the White House flat-footed. It's a very powerful amendment. Do you know anything about the political dynamics of that?
Yeah, actually there was quite a bit of lobbying. Human rights groups, progressive groups, labor groups were all behind getting that amendment. Actually, there were some attempts. There were a number of amendments that were proposed in the Senate, but Mitch McConnell limited the debate in the number that could be introduced. I believe there were over 100 trying to be offered by Democrats in the Senate. Menendez's amendment got a lot of traction. At first there was a look at maybe trying to do one that was LGBT specific, but it wasn't getting as much interest as the human trafficking issue, because that would have automatically excluded Malaysia. For certain, whereas the way that the LGBT resolution was worded, there was still some wiggle room. So I know that yes, it definitely caught the administration flat-footed. They were not expecting that, and they immediately began scrambling to get that removed. And I believe that it was removed, or at least softened, in the House version of TPA that passed. So I know that Paul Ryan made an explicit promise that he would have that issue taken care of. So I haven't followed closely enough to find out exactly how it was dispensed with, but I'm certain that it has been, or that it will at least attempt to be removed from the final version.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. We've got a few hands up here in the meeting room, so I'm going to ask folks, quickly identify yourself and let us know if your question is for Jeremy or for Cleve. Area code 415528.
Yes, this is Rabbi Catherine. My question is, how can we use our power to let the administration understand that any attempt to intimidate Congress who voted against TPP will not be tolerated?
Good question. Jeremy, you want to take that, or Cleve?
Well, this is Jeremy. My feeling is we have to keep up the pressure on Congress not to cave. The way that we prove that intimidation won't work is by defeating this bill. And I believe that's the only way that we're going to prove that the intimidation tactics that the administration is using haven't worked. Technically TPA did pass with, a couple extra votes, and everything is riding on the bad TAA bill. But, I forget which speaker said it earlier, but we need to, keep calling members of Congress and remind them that a vote for TAA in this case is a vote for fast track and against our interests.
Jeremy, I noticed too the caller is from area code 415. So I'm going to presume that Nancy Pelosi would be his rep. Do you have any advice for him there?
The pressure definitely needs to be put on Nancy Pelosi. It's been very precarious. She stood and made a great speech on the floor against fast track when this came up, but she's looking to make a deal, and we want to make sure that she doesn't sign that deal.
Great. Okay. Adam Weissman, our partner at Trade Justice, has a question. Adam?
Yeah, this is just a clarifying point with regard to the Menendez amendment, and anyone can correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but this is, for anyone's wondering about this, is what my understanding of what happened. So, because of the fact that McConnell short-circuited the amendment process in the Senate, the softer version of the Menendez amendment that Menendez negotiated with Ron Wyden actually never made it into the final bill. So in the House, they included an amendment in the Customs Enforcement bill to strip that amendment from fast track in the separate bill. If I'm getting that wrong, someone please correct me. But that's my understanding of what happened.
Thanks for that clarification.
Okay, we have an anonymous caller, so if you could let us know who you are and where you are and who your question's for.
My name is Stephen Costes, and I'm from Chelsea in New York City. And this question is for Jamie. Jeremy? For
okay.
Jeremy.
Okay.
Is there any way? If TPP must be stopped, and it must, on the grounds that it might invite Sharia law, is there any way we can? Do it like a counter education to Sharia law in the countries and rearranged the deal, or at least come up with an alternate deal whose most important things is human rights and removing the mosque from the state in those countries?
Well, that's a pretty complicated issue. I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of the argument that the administration is making for TPP, is that through the trade deal, we will somehow be able to have more pressure to place on these countries to come up to modern human rights standards and labor standards and environmental standards and other standards that they claim are in there. I think that's a tough sell. I've said this multiple times. In my opinion, it's kind of like when you buy a car. You can't drive it off the lot and come back a week later and say, I think I paid about $5,000 too much for that car. Can we renegotiate this deal? It just doesn't work that way. And it's kind of the same way with TPP. If there are enforceable human rights standards in there, as many have said, Obama is going around saying that this is the most progressive trade deal that we've, ever put forward. Well, then, A, show us the text and prove that it's there so that we can actually feel comfortable, since there are others who say that those standards aren't there. But also, why are we allowing these countries to join if they're not meeting the standards at the time of signing? They shouldn't be allowed to join. It's kind of a no-brainer. The enforcement regime has to be laid out very clearly, and even if the standards are in there, we have to look at how those standards are enforced. Who has to bring the complaint? Who has to enforce the complaint? Will a Republican administration, for example, feel as strongly about enforcing LGBT human rights standards as a Democratic administration would. We just don't know. And without clear answers, we have to assume that it's as bad or worse than what previous trade deals look like, which didn't have a whole lot of great human rights standards in them.
Okay, we have Alan Blaine's up next. Alan?
Hello again. I'm just curious to know if there's anyone who is, particularly Jeremy, if you could describe any activities that would relate to reviving the work on economic rights that Franklin Roosevelt was working on in 1944. I think that what needs to be emphasized is that some of these countries that are violating the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Covenant on Economic Rights, which I think they're sort of in line with what Roosevelt was trying to accomplish in his Economic Bill of Rights proposal. I think we need to really get people from all over the world understanding what that was all about, and if we can push that and get the Steelworkers Union and their partnership with Mondragon, which signed an agreement in 2009 to bring the social economy into North America and to work on that. I'd really like to find out if Pride at Work is connected with that project at all.
Only in the sense that we are connected to organized labor, and organized labor works on a lot of those issues. Not specifically from the framework that you mentioned, but when it comes to human rights, civil rights, and labor rights, that is the forefront of our work, whether that's here at home or internationally. And that's why labor has been so engaged in this fight specifically, is because it does impact every working person. Whether it's the folks who will be losing their jobs or the folks who will be put in direct competition with workers who are working in substandard conditions with incredibly low wages and no benefits. So, no, I don't have any specific knowledge of the work that you're talking about, other than, like I said, the general work of the labor movement. Cleve, do you have anything along those lines that you know about? I think you may be muted if you're trying to speak, Cleve.
Yeah, Cleve, just unmute yourself. I'm going to try and find Cleve in here. We've got hundreds of people on the call, so Cleve, I'm going to try and look for your number, but in the meantime, you might want to press *6. That will either unmute you or raise your hand. All right, thanks, Cleve. Go ahead. Your mic's open.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, great. I thought I was unmuted here, but I'm old. Forgive me. No, I don't have anything specific to add to that, except that I think within the LGBT community we face a real uphill climb in reminding people of the importance of unions and getting LGBT people and organizations to understand that these broader issues do have specific impact on LGBT people. I think there's very few LGBT people out there that would think of a trade deal as being an issue related to gay rights or to HIV/AIDS. So it takes some real work to do that. And I'm grateful that the AFL has made that kind of commitment through Pride at Work. And I think my own union, Unite Here, considering the resources available to us, is doing a very good job of connecting those dots and building those kinds of coalitions. But it is very, very difficult to do. And I was just looking at reports from the Los Angeles Pride celebration today where my union tried to bring this issue. And, the most common question was, what is TPP? So we've got a big challenge ahead of us, and I think everybody needs to just do what they can over the next few days. But I hope that what Jeremy and I have put out there for you assists you in finding arguments that can reach representatives with large LGBT constituencies, and there are many of them who voted incorrectly on this, looking at this list. So if you want help from me, cjones@unitehere.org. and Jeremy is also available to you. And Elizabeth, why don't you again put up both of our email contacts?
Yes, I will. Yes, we'll do that. We'll do that. Actually, what I think we'll do is I'll type it into the chat, everyone, as soon as we wrap, so that you can all download it. Is it okay? We've got one more person with a hand up who has not had a chance to ask a question yet, and it's either Sherry or Bob Nelson. I'm not sure which, because I think they call in on the same line. Is this Sherry?
Hi, it's Sherry Nelson in Chicago.
Oh, Sherry Nelson in Chicago. Okay, different Sherry Nelson. Go ahead, Sherry. Who's your question for?
It's for either Cleve or Jeremy. I actually was trying to figure out a way to raise TPP awareness among the LGBT rights groups in Chicago. I was specifically trying to locate anyone who had any kind of an idea of TPP in the LGBT community, mostly because we have the proud, I say that sarcastically, we have Mike Quigley, who's a Democrat in Illinois, the 5th District. He's my congressman. He always has all kinds of LGBT awareness and legislation on his website. He's a House rep. And so I was trying to find a way to get through his stubbornness. He's steadfastly stood by the president on TPP and voting for Trade Promotion Authority. And I thought, well, maybe because LGBT rights seem to be extremely important to him, maybe if he was aware of Brunei and perhaps even Malaysia, maybe that would help. So I was trying to contact organizations in Chicago. I contacted Equality Illinois, but I don't know of any to contact.
Well, this is Jeremy.
Yeah, so Jeremy, you can probably get contact with Sherry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have a Pride at Work chapter in Chicago, so that would be a good contact for you as well. If you want to drop me an email, I'll be happy to put you in touch with those folks. But specifically on Quigley, he has been a target of labor in particular for more than a year, and he has not budged. I am certain that he is aware of the human rights issues in TPP. He has had lobby visits specifically on that issue, as far as I'm aware, and practically every other issue from labor to the environment to you name it. He's had repeat visits to his district office and his Hill office here, and had plenty of literature and everything dropped off for him as well. So he is a hard target to move, but I would say that we should definitely keep up the pressure, and I'm happy to put you in touch with our folks there.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. And what I'm going to do, Sherry, I made note of your number. We'll get in touch with you. I didn't see you in the online meeting room. If you are in the online meeting room, type us a note. But if not, we'll follow up with you and try and put that connection together so that you can reach out to each other. So we'll do that after the call. All right. So thank you so much. I think we've gotten to all the questions, and I would really like to thank Cleve and Jeremy for their generosity in joining us today and giving us such a wonderful and kind of all-encompassing presentation that covers so many important issues. And we will make sure that anyone who wants to get in touch with either or both of them to help coordinate and bring your local LGBT community members who are interested in this issue together to educate folks in your neighborhoods, we'll make sure we get you the information. Thank you so much, Cleve and Jeremy, and just let us know anything you would like us to share after the call also with the group.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much, gentlemen. You are both an inspiration, truly. I'd like to now turn the mic over to Harriet Haywood, our National Call Team co-organizer and programs coordinator, who's going to run us through some of the regional events that have been put together by our volunteers around the country to help move their representatives. Harriet, just let me know when you'd like me to play slides.
Oh, and I just wanted to thank Cleve Jones and Jeremy so much. It was really inspiring hearing you both speak. And Liz, you put together such a great PowerPoint. Thank you so much. You can switch the slide now. Thank you. Okay, I just wanted to talk about a few events. I'm going to go really fast since we're fast approaching the 9 o'clock hour. Down in South Florida, we have been working tirelessly with Citizens Trade Campaign, CWA, and other labor organizations and citizen groups. And these particular pictures are of a canvassing that was organized down in Debbie Wasserman Schultz neighborhood in Pembroke Pines. And they put a huge pressure on her to vote no, and they've been, pressuring her for quite a long time. And she actually has flouted the people that elected her. She's flouted the labor movement, and she voted no on Fast Track and yes on TAA. And also the nearby Miami Republicans, Diaz-Balart and Ross Leitonen, they voted yes on Fast Track. I'm sorry, she voted yes on Fast Track and yes on TAA. And I just wanted to say Diaz, Ballard, and Leitonen, we expected them to vote no on Fast Track because of the human rights concerns, because they've always said that about this trade agreement. Okay, and right here we have Linda Abick and Fred Frost with communication workers. They are at the City Commission, and this is in Bay Harbor Island down in the Miami area. This was when they were presenting a petition for a TPP-free zone to the City Council. Change slide, please. This is the June 8th protest of Representative Kathleen Rice's flip-flop. This is a photo courtesy of the AFL-CIO. My understanding is there were at least 500 people at this event. So it was a really terrific event. You can change the slide, please. Thank you very much. This was really quite a surprise to me. I started working in some of these districts that we were really concerned about. This is in Terry Sewell's district in Alabama, and we just happened to be able to hook in with the Moral Mondays people in this territory, and they really knew very little about TPP and Fast Track. And we gave them the article by Reverend Barber that was in the Hill, and they immediately wrote this resolution against the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And you can see all of the different organizations that passed this resolution, and they gave it to Terry Sewell. Unfortunately, Terry Sewell did vote yes on both Fast Track and the TAA. But I will tell you that both senators of Alabama and 4 Congress people there did vote no on Fast Track. So it really was quite an amazing thing. And here is another resolution that was passed in Alabama. There is this an amazing organization. It's a justice organization, and you can see all the amazing people that are in this organization, and they too created this resolution. And this all happened within a very short period of time. And they passed this resolution, and they also brought it into Representative Sewell at her office, and she proceeded to vote no on Fast Track and yes on TAA. So I think that might be the last slide.
I think that is, and thank you so much, Harriet, and thanks for keeping up on what everybody's doing.
I did want to mention a couple of other events very quickly. I'm sorry. Crystal Ransom, she led an office visit. It was actually on the Flush the TPP site. Last Thursday, before the vote, she led an office drop by at Jim Clyburn's office. And Jim Clyburn actually came out and voted against Fast Track also. And there were some other events, but I know we're running out of time, and I don't have photos for them. So keep up the good work, everybody, and vote. Get your representative to vote no on the TAA. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Harriet. And if you want, go ahead and type information on those events, and if you have links to them, you can put it in the chat, and we'll make sure that people see it afterwards. All right, we're running about 4 minutes behind, so I'm going to wrap up real quickly. This is Elizabeth Warren, your call coordinator. Just wanting to invite you to our next call, which is one that's near and dear to my heart. Lots of my friends are postal workers, and I've been a big supporter of public banking personally, and I know many of you are as well. What we're going to be doing is hearing from the Public Banking Institute and also the Postal Workers Union about TPP's threat to public banking and the post office, and the fact that the post office has been wanting to introduce postal banking as another service that they provide. It's going to be a very, very interesting call, and we've already got 2 speakers confirmed. We are actually looking at inviting a third, but we've got the call up there ready to be registered for, so follow that link to register for the call. Share it with your friends. You will be getting more information on it, but it is happening June 28th. Our next scheduled call date is July 12th. We're still confirming speakers for that, so stay tuned. Again, thank you everyone so much for joining us tonight, and the call to arms is this: get on your phones and just start calling your reps, and especially Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, and just make them absolutely terrified of voting for TAA or helping this thing go through. Reach out to your senators, reach out to anyone you can think of. Just get the word out to every member of Congress that this is something that's going to basically haunt them next year and beyond. Thank you again so much, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.